I'll try to keep my questions as brief and non-impertinent as possible. I'd like to say thank you, thank God for the rain in St. Louis tonight. I was at the game on Sunday and I swear I got goosebumps with Napoli. Let's get this over with. That crazy LaRousse is freaking me out, man. Learn how to use the phone, dude. If you want to see the review for this show, which I'm writing, you can see it on the Dallas Observer blog, DC9. Hopefully in the morning, depending on when I get up. So this is not too late in the evening. I just got a few quick questions. I said I'll try to make them as interesting as possible.
The answers are yes, no, and maybe.
Well, no, I was reading a bio on the way over here, and it said Rolling Stone magazine credits Tom with ushering in the era of the singer-songwriter. So you're the guy, right?
It's a heavy burden to bear. I'm not even near. I don't think so. I think it was coming anyway. I might have nudged it a little bit.
Well, you were one of the first people to cover James Taylor and Joni Mitchell and very young Jackson Browne. What was it about those songs, their songs, that attracted you to them?
Basically, I was desperate for material. I mentioned earlier, I was over deadline for delivering an album to Elektra, and I'd kind of run out of folk stuff that was getting me excited, which is actually saying something, because I was never really. Most of my colleagues were specialists. I had a friend who played only Woody Guthrie stuff, and somebody else who only did Delta blues or Chicago blues or Carter Appalachian stuff. And I was a generalist. I did a little a song from here and a song from there, and mixed them all up. But I couldn't find any more material that was exciting to me. And so my first album for Elektra was pretty folky, Panama Limited, and Solid Gone, and stuff like that. Second one half of it, one side of it. Back then there were two sides to it. One side was folky, and the other side was kind of late 50s rock and roll, which was actually just about halfway in between the original late 50s original event and the revival, which happened about 10 years later. So there's been some speculation in some small circles as to whether I was prophetic or retarded putting this album out in the mid-60s, but I'd run out of folk stuff then. So then I had to come up with a whole new album, and I just didn't know what to do. And about that time, I met Joni in Detroit, as I mentioned. James Taylor, I'd actually come very, very close to meeting a bunch of times. My roommate in Cambridge, after I left Harvard, my roommate in Cambridge was a guy named Zach Wiesner, who was in a band called The Flying Machine with James. And he kept saying, I got this friend, you really got to meet him. He writes great songs. I'd say, Zach, pick up your room. He's a slob. And I didn't meet James until later when Paul Rothchild, who was my producer, introduced me to him. And I remember we sat down on the floor of an empty office at the Columbia, at the Elektra offices in New York City. We sat on the floor with a tape recorder. He recorded a bunch of stuff for me. And I ended up using a couple of those tunes. And Jackson I never did meet, but Elektra had his publishing rights. So I had access to his publishing demos. And I really loved these songs. They were sort of folky, but they were different. They were more literary, more musically sophisticated, but they still had that folky sensibility to them. And so I felt right at home with them. And so that's how the album grew.
Well, one of your most covered songs, of course, No Regrets. And what is it about that song that you think galvanized so many singer-songwriters to cover it?
I don't know. It's a funny thing. One of the things is that it was done by a group called the Walker Brothers of England, and it was a huge hit, gigantic hit in England. And off of that, there were some spin-offs from that. Other artists heard it there and started doing it from there, including Bono from U2 started using the chorus in some of their stage shows. And he thought it was a Scott Walker tune until I set him straight.
You called him correctly the right way, right?
Well, I went to a show actually down in Phoenix and said, "Excuse me," and they were very gracious.
Well, if all people don't know, if you go back before the Circle game, one of my favorite albums, Take a Little Walk With Me, and my favorite song of yours is Galveston Flood. So my only question is, like, please play that song.
Yeah. I'll see what I can do.
What about who the hell is Roosevelt Gook?
You know, Roosevelt Gook, who was Roosevelt Gook? He was not Bob Dylan. That was a rumor that I probably didn't do enough to try to squash. Roosevelt Gook was, I'm trying to think. There were several pseudonyms on albums back then, and the reason was that if you got somebody to double, if somebody came in and played guitar on a thing, you owed him $300 for the guitar section. But then, if he was done in 30 minutes and wanted to put a mandolin part on, you had to pay him again. And so the game that we pay guys one session, but then they'd use a fake name for the second session, for the second instrument. And so Roosevelt Gook was one of those. There was also Daddy Bones, who was John Harold. Daddy Bones was John Harold. Roosevelt Gook was...
Well, I heard it was Al Cooper just trying to get a little extra cash.
You know, I think you're right. I think that was Al Cooper. But he didn't get extra cash. He didn't get paid for being Roosevelt Gook.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you about, I really like the new record, What I Know, and I know you guys would like the songs you've heard tonight, but it was a long gap in between that and your last studio record. Why is that?
Well, the thing is, I decided, early on when I first started out, I figured I was going to die a tragic death in an early age. As so many great artists that I admired had done before me. And so there was no real point in making another album. Because I'd be dead soon. And then and only then would I gain the recognition and adulation, really, that I so richly deserve. It was as much a business plan, really, as a premonition. But I realized, that I came to realize that, the problem with tragic death at an early age, or TDEA as we call it, is that it doesn't just happen. You have to apply yourself. It takes, and I lacked focus. I lacked dedication. I lacked focus. And it just, the calendar kept going on by, and the years were going on, and I felt death was passing me by. I didn't give up on my dream. I hung on to it into my 30s and 40s, 50s, and finally in my late 60s, I had to grapple with the fact that TDEA had probably evaded me, and so I might as well make another album.
And we're all glad that he did, yes.